Hey, welcome to episode 3 of Into the Foxhole.
Hooray! 3 episodes in.
Aw, yeah. We're here to talk about some wild shit.
Oh yeah, about to get dirty in this shit.
We are here to talk about a controversial issue that's not even new this generation as much as it's new to the young kids. This has been brought up, I would say, many times. Like when we were younger, this might have been brought up to like otaku nerds, and it's going to be gaming sessions in terms of value. Is 100 hours truly worth $60, and is 20 hours worth complete garbage trash?
Yeah,
should we scale the quality of said game by the length of hours? How do you feel about this, Greg?
Well, like you said, it was definitely a huge issue back in especially the when the PS3 was first coming out, 360. Everyone was talking about how long this game is. Is it worth your $60? That was especially when they did that price bump and everything. So now everyone was like, "Oh man, extra $10. I need to make sure I'm getting my money's worth." So it became a huge thing, like, oh man, this game's only 6 hours long, this game's only 8 hours long, whereas this game's 30 hours long, but it's also a piece of shit.
I mean, we've seen that even slightly before then.
Yeah,
but a lot of that was
huge.
A lot of that was genre specific. Like I don't think it was as big as an issue. Like let's say. Yeah, I would say it was really, really genre specific, as it still is. Yeah. But I think it's more prevalent now that Western RPGs are sort of getting a shine that Japanese RPGs used to get earlier, like in gaming's history. Mm-hmm. So now, the staple game that nobody wants to shut the fuck up about has to be The Witcher 3. So this seems to be the game that everyone uses as their example as value. That, oh man, the game's key content is 100 hours plus. Man, you are getting the value for 60. Mm-hmm. When in reality, we've been pushing 100 hours. Like Craig and I have been pushing 100 hours in RPGs for a fucking long time. So it's not new for us to play an RPG that's 100 hours. In fact, it's commonplace in some RPGs.
To me, a decent length of RPG is about 60, 70 hours. If that's not giving me 60, 70, man. Mm-hmm. That's a short fucking RPG.
There are some RPGs where you might put it around the 40-hour mark, and the 40-hour mark is short. Consider you might play an action game that comes out, Metal Gear, Call of Duty. Well, I wouldn't put a Metal Gear in there. I'd put something like a Call of Duty or Assassin's Creed. And these games, they're clocking at your 13 hours, some of them 9 or 6 hours, but you're still paying $60 for this. I always hear the concept of, well, these multiplayer games, you could continue to play it afterwards. You don't know if I'm there for that. You don't know that. So when you're bundling in this, the multiplayer on top of this, you're not initially knowing why I'm actually buying the game for. I could be buying it for the story. I know people who buy Call of Duty to play its main actual game. Disgusting.
That'd be me.
Jesus Christ.
I don't give a fuck about multiplayer, man.
You see? And that's what it is. So, if you take that aside and you see that someone's buying this game and they feel there is a value in the 6 hours that they put into this game, even though it's not as long as an RPG, that 6 hours are still valued similar to that. Right. An experience sort of tailor-made specific to the genre. So if you like a first-person shooter and this first-person shooter is lasting you 13 hours, that might be a great 13 hours to you. That shit need to be 200 hours long? Probably not.
To me, what I guess it comes down to, because you can talk about how long a game is, blah, 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 blah. You can talk about that shit for hours, man. What it comes down to, a good game is a good game, right?
No, you're right, though. You're right.
If a good game is good, it doesn't matter if it's 3 hours or 300, because I am getting as much enjoyment as possible out of that. And the best example I can give for a short game that is still super fucking valuable, it is one of my favorite games of all time. That's going to be Star Fox 64.
Let's take a push.
When you, you can sit down, I can sit down in that game for an hour, beat that shit, and I will be the happiest kid in the fucking world. I don't need to play this game. This game doesn't need to be a 9-hour epic.
That's sort of like with replay. The first time I think it took me 5-6 hours, if not slightly longer. It's like the first time you're playing Star Fox. Clearly, it's going to be longer.
Right.
It's gonna be longer the first time
Absolutely.
you're playing through it. That second playthrough, I don't necessarily count the hours in terms of that initial value.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone can replay anything a lot. So, but the initial value you get out of Star Fox is justified in the same respect it was justified when you played Call of Duty for those 6-7 hours that the single player was worth it.
Right.
So now we see in a lot of games that released recently, games like The Order, where people question is
Right.
9 hours okay for a game? Is 8-9 hours okay? But it's like they're okay for some of these first-person shooters that are releasing at $60 to be playing that. So why isn't it not okay with this title to come out to be that 8 or 9 hour mark when we have other titles that have released that are actually less than that?
28 FPS, man. That's what it is.
Kirk's like that was it. That was it.
Nothing to do with the 9 hours.
Mm-hmm.
FPS.
But it's like we've heard that a lot recently with that title releasing, with people adding up value with games like The Witcher and saying things like, well, if these developers would make games like these, and let's ignore that Bethesda does it all the time. Let's ignore that BioWare does it all the time. Let's ignore that Square does it all the time. So you're essentially ignoring the entire realm of everyone else making RPGs to say this developer gets it. This developer gave us this quality title. I look at it as though I like CD Projekt Red. I look at it as this developer is just merely catching up to what other developers have been doing. This is their first open world game. It's their first really big game. The Witcher 1 and 2 are smaller games, much more linear. I would not really define them as fully open world. And because they're more smaller in nature, they're not nowhere near like a Bethesda or a BioWare RPG where you're a little more open and it's a little more complex. Let's say in terms of choosing a different race or a different class. You don't have that in The Witcher. So when they created this big open world for the first time, they were tasked with really creating these big side quests that they never really had in the first or second game to this to this point. It's not that CD Projekt is getting what gamers want. It's merely they're catching up to the level that these other developers have been acting like. If you look at something like Fallout 4, if you look at something like the next Mass Effect, that's maybe not so much the next Mass Effect, but they're not so much.
Hey, you don't know.
They're not so much. I don't
know.
But I don't
Leave
know.
BioWare alone.
I don't know either. For all we know, it could be, they could aim it towards in RPG direction. As from what I'm hearing, that's really what they are doing. They're aiming it to be like what the first game was setting itself up to be, and that's a real homegrown RPG.
Right.
Like, you could explore anywhere. Here are side quests. Here's the Mako. Have at it. They're not just doing you could, of course, clearly do the main mission, but it's sounding like they want it to be more open than the previous ones because they have the hardware to do it, and because it's under EA, I think EA would probably want it to be that much more expansive RPG versus trying to make it more action-based.
They're going to throw the fucking bank at that game, man. Are you kidding me?
It will. So, like, with the example of what they could do with Mass Effect and examples of, like, the Elder Scrolls series and Fallout and many other RPGs or Dragon Age, we already have open world RPGs that deliver 100+ hours of content to us that is normal for us. Nobody was jumping out of their socks saying, damn, Oblivion and Skyrim out here giving 100 out. That wasn't something special. That was expected with those games. The only difference with something like CD Projekt Red is that the previous entries they had of their games weren't that long. Witcher 1 is about 50 hours, give or take. Witcher 1's 50 hours, if not shorter, if you choose to not do the side quest. And Witcher 2 is about the same. Both of those RPGs, Craig and I would consider short RPGs. We wouldn't even see those as something expansive and long if you consider Final Fantasy IV Chrono Trigger like 40 hours. They're not the longest RPGs. If you consider we got RPGs that are 2-3 times, sometimes even close to 4 times as long in terms of the length and the content. Length and content doesn't necessarily just mean real value. There's lots of games that could be long. That doesn't mean that they're good. So
exactly. That was literally the point I was just about to make.
Could be really bad.
You can make the longest fucking game in the world, have so much shit be put in there, but if it's just all the same crap, I mean, like, you can look at, like, for example, an MMO. An MMO is supposed to have, like, unlimited value, quote unquote. If that's the realm you're gonna put it in, an MMO is supposed to have unlimited value. No one fucking plays like half these fucking MMOs out there for good reason, because a lot of the shits are fucking boring.
Perfect.
You don't want to do the same shit over and over and over, hours and hours and hours for quote unquote value. I need to be engaged. I need to be wanting to do these things and feeling like I'm getting something out of it. Otherwise, what's the fucking point? I can be playing the game for 300 hours, but just not give a fuck.
Thank you. And that's what it comes down to. It's like, though lots of people were saying that, I agree to a degree that specific games could have been different pricings, and they could have worked their way out and said, hey, look, if this game is going to, come out and it's going to be 10 hours, maybe you should adjust that pricing. But the way I see it as is that's not something you do as some sort of nice gesture to goodwill. The industry has set a standard to say, this is the price that we're going to be charging for these games. Because of that standard being given, a company can't just come out and say, well, we're going to go against that grain and then lose money on initial investment.
Right.
How many people are going to do it? I get sometimes that, yeah, it makes some financial sense if you were to say, okay, if you're going to make Killzone, just make the multiplayer separate from the single player, everyone wins. I mean, if you're going to say that and then have them as different values, you initially, right off the bat, are saying, well, this single player is really worth this much money. Who else is going to follow suit to justify this?
Right.
EA going to do that? Is Activision going to do that? Fucking Series does 20 million units a year. They're not going to sit there and say, well, let's just give you each one for 30 and have you choose. Oh, so you mean lose money?
Yeah.
Because that's really what that means. At the end of the day, the game's still being made on an engine.
Absolutely.
At the end of the day, people need to get paid for the work that were put inside that game. So if someone's going to say, fuck it, I like multiplayer more. So you're telling me half the price, these people are getting a value that potentially could give them thousands of hours at half the price. So it sounds like it makes sense in theory to sell a game that way and to say, well, if it's this much hours, it should be this much dollars. When you look at the order, no fucking way was the game made at a value of $30.
Right.
They fucking broke the bank creating that game.
Absolutely.
There is no way they're going to come out there and be like, let's just sell for half price since it's half a game. So what you're telling me here is they didn't spend money on all that tech? They didn't spend money all the years. This game was in development since 2011. This game was in development. So you really think they're going to throw that bitch out of the bank?
Absolutely.
Oh, because somebody want to pay $20 because it's only 2 hours? Put it this way. You watch a movie, if you're going to go, and I bought Prometheus when it came out, you're going to pay $20 for a brand new Blu-ray for Prometheus. That's a 2-hour fucking movie. It's not 6. It's not 10. So if you're telling me that you think $30 is worth 10 hours, bullshit. If there was a damn movie or a DVD or a box set collection and they were just like, here, it's going to be $30 or $20, hell no, because that doesn't make any sense. So I understand some people's point of saying maybe we should scale time to fit value, but that doesn't make sense in the real world where these things really cost real money.
Right.
To the point of something like The Order, we could go back several generations with the very first Onimusha game. Onimusha is only 5-6 hours long. It's a game you could really run through.
Right.
It's a short game. That game was not a budget game.
Exactly.
That game was full price when it released.
Right.
There's lots of games we could think about right now that released full price and were short titles, but were great titles.
Absolutely.
So there's lots of games you could think about that not really that long. They have to pay for development. We don't care how long you think the game might be. It still costs them money to make that game.
Absolutely.
So why should they take a loss because you might rush through the game or you might feel like you should be paying 100 hours?
Isn't like exactly what you say. Like development time doesn't equal development time equals money, not the amount of hours in the game equals money. It's as simple as that. So like you said, I'm trying to think of PS2 games and PS1 era games that are just super fucking short.
Oh, we got a lot of them. There's a lot of really good ones that were sort of short. Siphon Filter was a really short game.
Siphon Filter.
That was a good ass series, bro. I'm not even gonna side.
I'm saying
tangent on that, but I was
even look at the games look at the Mega Man games. The Mega Man games they're
short as
hell.
And those games are fucking
people conquer the fuck out of those games.
They did. Those games, Mega Man games,
fuck out of those games. So the point where these games are getting beaten half of them could be beaten under an hour.
Yes, Mega Man games are
a lot of people bought that shit for $60 back in the day.
They did. Mega Man games were full price. Even some of when Nintendo had their garbage ass cartridges. Some of those games were $60-$70 at a time where games were $40 brand new.
Just because you're getting them for your Mega Man X collections and your Mega Man collections for $20 now, man.
That doesn't mean
those games came out. They were $60, just like everything else.
Exactimo. So it's like, and that's a great example to bring up. You bring up an amazing point with that. When these collections come out, especially last generation, we just got collections galore because of Blu-ray.
Shit.
Blu-ray was giving us collections galore. So it's like we had all these collections releasing, like the God of War one, like the Ico one, and then like
There's the Jack and Daxter,
Jack
the
and
Sly
Daxter,
Cooper,
Ratchet one.
Ratchet.
There was Prince of Persia and Splinter Cell, Kingdom Hearts.
Get that one.
Exactly.
I actually want to get the Prince of Persia one.
Oh,
Damn it!
Oh, you want to get
what have you done?
You want to get it for 2 games? Jesus Christ!
Listen, those 2 games though. All right, we're getting off track. I'm sorry.
But to our point we're making is when you look at the price of what those collections are now, that's not to say that the time that you're spending in them is somehow equal to a specific dollar amount. Those games were already done, finished. Only thing happened to those games is they're just being ported over.
Right.
It costs less than $1 million, less than 6 months to bring a game over to another platform. That low of a time it might take to actually do that. So, of course, they're making profit out the bank of the game that's already been created. So when I hear people look at the Mega Man games like 10 or 9 or the whole collection, and you might think about, let's say, a future Mega Man Legends, people might be put off to like Legends 3. We don't know, right? We're doing our best.
You can dream.
But it's like, when people look at Mega Man's Legends, let's say 3, if they were to put Mega Man Legends 1 and 2 in the side game in a collection for $20, people might get put off for paying $39, or I think it's $39 or $49, whatever the full price is for handheld games. People might get put off at paying full price with this understanding that, well, we bought the last one, this one should be just as cheap to make. Ignoring that they still spent time and money to create the game.
Absolutely.
Ignoring that, though you might be finishing those games in a similar time, that doesn't mean that the value to them is equal that way. They still had to hire people to make these things happen. So every single time I hear that idea of a game should be priced A, B, C, or whatnot, I feel it's too much to ask a company to spend that type of, to lose that type of money to get a game out there to fit a price that you want because of what you played with some older titles or some ports of it, and then say, well, that equals that. That doesn't sound like that makes sense to me.
Absolutely. I mean, like, it's as simple as that. Like, there is no... Like, I don't even know how much more I can hammer that point home, because, like, I feel like we just covered it. Like, that's just how it is.
True.
When you look at something that's close, when you look at something like development, and that's just how it is. It costs money to make games, and they're going to make a game at a certain value. They can spend X amount of money. They're going to spend X amount of money because they need to sell the game at this X value. It's as simple as that.
When it comes to business, a lot of it just has to do with that. It's like it's still a business, and when you're running games, it's still a business. It's not the value based on what you want. So they still have to run themselves. They still have to answer to people if they're not a private company. So if they're creating a game, how are they going to explain to their shareholders that we're making this game at half the price because some people on fucking NeoGAF or something cried about it, so we're going to make this game half the price, and their competitors aren't? If you were selling a product and everyone feels that the product shouldn't be that price, but every company's charging that, why should you lose money per unit fighting them because somebody wants it to be a different price?
Yeah.
This is just the difference between this is what consumers want it to be and this is what it really is. They cannot, even if I believe they can afford to do it, there's too much potential sales left on the table for them to make more money that it doesn't really make business sense. I know it sounds ethically wrong to say if a company knew they could charge less and still make a profit, then maybe they should. But at the end of the day, this business is about making money. It's not about being the nicest, friendliest. They need to make money. It's just not
there's so
fair.
many checks and balances. Like, sure, they can say, like, oh, yeah, you know, I can sell it less and I might reach more people. But, like, the thing is, when it comes down to, if I can sell it for more and then put out less copies, I might end up, it's so much give and take with that stuff. When you're looking at, like, how you're going to value a game or how you're going to value any product in particular, you have to make into consideration, like, okay, I can maybe if I charge $30 for this, I can sell 100.
Yes.
But if I sell it for 60, I'm more than likely going to sell at least 50 copies. That's the same. You're getting the same profit.
And
you're getting the same profit, and you're producing less. To a company that's a little bit better because you're not putting as much work into actually making the same amount of money. So of course they're going to make a chart. They're going to cost more.
Exactly. And even when you look at marketing of the title, people already have this, and this is what the craziest thing about this whole ordeal is. People already have this standoffish feeling about free-to-play titles or titles that are budget titles. Any single time you get a title that's, let's say, $20, you might get a title that's $20, and people already feel like they have a idea about if that game's good or what that game's about. It's not being treated the same way you're treating other games. It's almost as if the second you give a game a $20 value or $30 value, you throw it in that budget category of, oh, it's just this price, that's not that interesting. $60 commands that idea that you treat this like the rest. Like, this game is just as big as the rest of the boys. The second you decide to say, well, we're going to price it there, pricing is still marketing. So when you price it at that $20, you send a signal to everybody about, stand back, guys, this is a budget game, it's going to be low rent. So people are going there with an expectation. Let's say the expectation shattered and it's a really great game. Who's working for less money to make this happen?
Right.
So it's like when you look at that, these people are still contracted and they still need to, get paid. Who's going to be accepting less than that? A game could be great, but just because it's really, really great doesn't necessarily mean it's going to get great sales. Absolutely. We've seen that so many times where a game's Ico. There's many times where a game is really great and it just doesn't get that big. How can I say? It doesn't get the big reception in terms of sales that you would expect. Zack and Wiki, great example. That is one of the best games on the Wii.
Absolutely.
It didn't even get a fraction of the sales the other titles got that we felt were lesser that didn't even use the controller.
Fucking Skyward Sword.
Yes, it's like garbage ass game. So it's like when you get to a point where those things start to happen, if you're a company and you're looking at this and somebody's saying, well, you should charge this because the game's going to be short. Even if you know this game's going to be masterpiece, that doesn't translate into sales. That doesn't mean more people will buy it because you don't really know that. Absolutely. You could budget this damn game at $30 and it would probably still not get those same amount of sales because it may not be catching on, period. So it may be best to say, here, charge us $60, make the best you can for those 6 months, and then lower the price some other time to get the stragglers that wanted to pick it up.
Right.
But not lose the initial investment because what people are deeming what they feel a game's worth.
Absolutely. Like, I actually want to touch on something real fast. Because I noticed, like, with the whole order nonsense, controversy, whatever the fuck you want to call it, like, that's what is it, like a 9-hour game, right? Something like that? Like, 8, 9 hours?
It was like 8, 9 hours.
8, 9 hour game. Like, how long was Uncharted?
Was Uncharted, like, around there?
That's what I'm saying.
Uncharted was around, like, like...
the first Uncharted was just as long.
Because I beat it around, like, 10, 11 hours.
Yeah, like, it's just as long. Just as much like flair, like emphasis on the story and what's happening in the game.
Gameplay was horrendous.
Why didn't
the shooting was horrendous?
Let's not get into that. All right, it got better over time.
Craig's like, I promise to not bring it up.
I'm trying to put forth an example. You're just shitting on it. That's a story for another day. Listen, like these, like to me, that would be like the closest comparison. Like how is it that when Uncharted came out, it was like, damn, look at this game. It's beautiful. Story's great. Character's great. Shooting's all right. You know, it's a solid fucking game. 8 hours long. Now all of a sudden, how X many years later, we come here to Order. Granted, I haven't played Order. I don't know exactly how it plays. I don't know exactly how the story is. But a game that is just as long, to me, which seems that is focusing just as much on plot and character and its actual story and the things that are going on. How is it that this game gets the flack that Uncharted was so able to avoid?
I think a lot of it comes down to teams. It comes down to marketing. Like Naughty Dog is a great team, so it's like the game, the shooting and Uncharted was like meh.
It got better.
It does get better, but it's like it was pretty bad in the first game.
Uncharted was
but
still a bore to get through.
Yeah, you excuse it because it has a great story. It's like it was well animated, and you also get like amazing set pieces along with amazing platforming in the game. So I like everything that they do with that game. It's a good showpiece for the system, and it's a good showpiece for how good the team is. The Order is sort of, I guess people have assumptions of what they thought this game was going to be. I think many people saw The Order and saw it like, well, it's sort of going to be like Uncharted, but in London, or sort of going to be like this action-y type of thing. And I think
so
a lot of
hype got to it. Is that what
I don't even want to say the hype as much as I would say misguided excitement is what I would. I don't want to say hype.
That's kind of what hype is, though.
I don't want to say hype. I want to say excitement that was taken a different way. But
I don't want to say glad. I don't want to say he was just. He had so much glee.
I don't want to say
I
he
want
was
to make
happy.
a bigger word, a bigger, better word.
I don't want to say he was happy.
It's fucking hype.
I want to say he was much more excited than normal. But the game, a lot of people have an idea of what they think The Order was going to be.
Okay.
When the studio itself, Ready at Dawn and Sony in Santa Monica, sort of make it really clear what it really is. So they're saying, cinematic story. They're saying, interactive. They're not telling you it's like this deep skill-based game. They're not telling you it's like this open skill tree and open world. They're not telling you any of this. So I think people go into there off of an expectation for it to be a game that it's never marketed itself to be. So with that idea, I think they go in there expecting not only just a longer game, they go in there expecting a different type of game. All the footage that the show was shown to market the game was sort of shown that this is not really what the game's about. It's not about a skill tree. It's not about technical stuff. It's not really about that. It's almost like if you might view something like or Heavy Rain sort of, or Beyond Two Souls. You do certain stuff in that game, but it's not necessarily a game that you would put on Uncharted level or even The Last of Us level. So you might see both of those games, and let's say if you never knew what they were, you might think both of those games are similar to each other. They're not. They are worlds apart. But if you were to take a first glance at both of these games, you might assume that they're very much the same.
Okay.
One's this type of a game where it's more of a, here is the focus on story, here is this, you could interact and do other stuff. It's sort of similar to a action that has point and click elements. It's more about telling the story than we're here to give you this deep combat stuff like you might see with Horizon. So there's a difference between how you see Horizon Zero Dawn being marketed and how you see The Order being marketed. They're telling you you could craft these things. They're telling you the world is this big. They're telling you, yeah, you could do different things and defeat them different ways. They're giving you the grunt of this is what you could do.
Right.
When The Order was shown and talked about, this game was very much showing you, here are the cinematics, here's some of the cover shooting, here's some of this. They were not going so deep into the gameplay as to lead you to believe it's a more expansive game than you think. They never promised the game to be anything like that. This game is not trying to aim to be a Gears of War type game. It never promises to be that. So I think that if you look at the examples of Heavy Rain and Horizon, you can't just say, well, here's Heavy Rain, and it's not like Horizon, but here's Horizon, and somehow I was tricked. Like, you had to have known through the marketing that they never promised this game to be what I think people expecting it to be. But even for even for what The Order is, it is similar to the very first Uncharted game in terms of it's a short game, it's an introduction to the series. In the gameplay, the shooting I felt was bad in Uncharted. So it's like, if you look at those points, these games are pretty similar in that regard in terms of how short they are. I don't think you could put like big value on try. I don't think you could put a number on a specific value on something like that. Right. It could be different for anyone.
So my question then comes down to like, who then is at fault for the way The Order was marketed? Is it the actual marketing team, or is it the people who were just too dumb to realize what the fuck? I don't know. At?
It's like I felt that the marketing team could have conveyed that these things aren't in the game, but how do you how do you tell a game?
How do you market? Say like, hey, we don't have.
Yes,
this.
I mean, I know. How do you downgrade the marketing of a game to say,
like, oh no, we're not going to be like all these other games. We're going to be just this.
It's hard to do that. You see games that are closer to that narrative base, that we're here for specific story element. You see games that do that often, like Life is Strange or The Walking Dead, or you see lots of. We still waiting on episode 5. No, but we see lots of games that are those narrative based games that advertise themselves to be narrative based games. This is a game that has shooting in it, but clearly is still driving deep to the story of this beginning of this world. Mm-hmm. It's hard to just say, well, it's like game XYZ, because it's not. So it's even harder to say that, well, this game is like like Uncharted, not Uncharted, but this game's like Gears or something, because it's not. Right. Gears of War is deeply combat focused. So because it falls in the middle of those two, it's difficult to really categorize or market something like The Order, because it really falls in between. We're telling a story, and there's shooting involved from, it's all about gameplay with a story and, tacked on. Gears of War is that. Gears of War is not about telling a story. That fucking story is horrible.
God.
But
thick neck motherfucker.
Thick neck ass.
Around,
can't turn around. Can't touch his back. So it's like
thick neck motherfuckers running around shooting aliens, man. That's all it is.
But it's like that's what it is. So when you look at the way Gears of War was made and marketed, even though it markets stuff about a story, it's just set piece, boss, gunplay, boss, horde, gunplay. That's a lot of what that game is. Its story is not like The Order. Its story is not like other games. They marketed it to sort of be a little bit of both, and they're sort of right to. There is a story that exists in the game, but it's deeply combat focused.
Right.
You can't market a game like The Order to be like a game like Gears, thus it was never marketed to be that way. They never went out to say, here's this amazing boss battle and here's all the things you could do. They did that with the first 2 seconds of Horizon Zero Dawn. Yeah. To say, we're pinning down this T-Rex, you could shoot him with this, here's this composite bow made from the creatures, and here's you taking off this gun so you could kill. They go through everything to tell you that this is what the game is, and we're marketing it as this. Expect the shit to be $60. That's what it is. So that's how they market it.
$60. Value.
Value. Look how big this world is. Value, my nigga. No, that's sort of how they market Horizon Zero Dawn within the first 2 seconds.
Right.
You couldn't find a multitude of videos of The Order from even a month before its release that were ever trying to tell you that this was how deep it is. The games that are that deep, like let's say Bloodborne, that are that deep, tell you they're that deep. They market that they're that deep. They show you, here's all the cool things you can do. They let you know this because that's what the game's about.
Fair.
You're not going to go through let's say a trailer for The Walking Dead 3. You're not going to go through a trailer for The Walking Dead 3 where like, look at all the shit you could craft. Look at these new guns that we gave this bitch. They're not going to do that. Like, she's a little grown now, so she can carry the shotty. They're not going to do that. Okay? So, in my version of...
slow and reverse time now.
It's like, look at this shit. Crazy. No, I don't think they're going to do that because I don't see... I'm just joking with that. It's time being grown. She gonna be grown.
Dude, they need to make a third. Anyway,
she gonna be grown, but they don't market any of those games that way because the games aren't. So you can't just say that. Well, this game was worth this and this game's not. It was they marketed it. I think the best you could sort of market this title without trying to lessen its value. It's hard to say that a game like this is worth the same price as The Walking Dead if you see the difficult tech that they had to deal with in the number of years it's been in development. There have been lots of titles, mind you, Uncharted spent just as many years in development. Mm-hmm. Short game, but you're not just saying that, well, we spent years making an 8-hour game. You spent years crafting the design, animation. You spent years crafting the engine. You spent years doing a lot of shit to make sure that this game will run right, so that way 2 could run right, 3 could run right, and 4 will be amazing. That's what they're really crafting. So yeah, the next games are clearly going to be shorter development times, but that's not to say that you add that development time in terms of value and then state that, well, The Order should be this price because of blah, blah, blah. they spent money to make that engine look that way, and they spent money to really craft what this game technically could be. If the initial game is short, so be it. That doesn't mean its sequels will be, because neither of the other Uncharted that preceded are shorter. They're all longer.
Right.
So if you consider that...
Sometimes for the worse.
Exactly. So Uncharted 3. But if you consider that point, that's hard to tell a company, go spend X number of years in development, spend this much money, making this game. Oh, but let's jump out, put it for $20. That game was not specifically just made to be that type of narrative cash in for $20. You could see it in the engine that it was not created that way. We don't know how long the sequels are going to be. We don't even know how detailed or how deep any of the sequels are going to be in this game.
Bottom line, all I'm hearing is pay attention. Look at what you're buying. Like, know exactly what's going on, because maybe Order 66 didn't have to get as much flack. Because, again, I haven't played the game. I still want to play the game.
It'd be at budget price, so you feel like it'll be worth that value to you, Greg. It's that budget price.
Like, I still want to play the game. I still want to hear what all the flack was about.
I mean, because of the games you like, I think you'll like it. It's
but like
The Walking Dead.
I just don't believe. Like, I honestly don't believe, from what I'm hearing about this game, from what I'm seeing about this game, that it didn't deserve the shit it got.
No,
so I want to be sure that, like, again, I want to be clear that I have not played this game. This game could be the shittiest fucking game in the world, but I want to be sure, so I'm going to play it. And
you're right. But it's a game that's very much up your alley, because you've already played like Heavy Rain and like Beyond Two Souls and like Walking Dead.
That's the thing. I was actually thinking about that. I have not finished that game.
Which one? Beyond Two Souls. So yeah, I remember we talked about.
I might actually just put that up on the channel.
And you're right too. You're a good kid.
I think I might just stream that. I mean, not stream it. I might just record that. Just put it up on the channel. Why the fuck not?
You're a good kid. But in terms of, just to close it out, in terms of gaming sessions, in terms of value, I don't believe there is. Gaming's like. We've said this on the podcast. With Akash is a good kid.
He'll be here eventually.
He'll be here eventually. Good kid. Gaming's too diverse to give it one title, or it's too diverse to say that this is long, this is not. Like, RPGs are longer, yes. That doesn't mean that the values of other games.
RPGs don't.
And a good one that we left out, I actually completely forgot about this. Fuck it. Say what you're gonna say. I'll tell you.
No, I was gonna say just because an RPG is longer than a first-person shooter, or just even like an action platformer, doesn't make it that RPG a better game.
No, you're right.
Like,
you're right.
I'll bring up Star Fox 64. I would play Star Fox 64 a million times over before I touch an RPG that is like 3 hours, or like not 3 hours long, like 80 hours long. That's like a
that is an endeavor.
That is every 2-3 years type shit. Like, I might pick that shit back up, but like a game like Star Fox 64, I get the value out of those short playthroughs, and that's what makes that game so special. So I mean,
I was gonna
the game you were thinking about.
I was gonna bring up Portal. Portal's a short game, but
game's like near perfection.
It is near perfection. Portal's a really short game. But it's like, if they were to charge full price for it, I would agree. It's just like, if you look at the puzzle games that are up on like Steam, like that Cube game, and like all the other games that like come out on there.
Shit, what's that one game?
This
is gonna kill me. I have on my Steam wish list. Hang on.
Keep talking. Keep talking. Think about that puzzle game. But it's like, it's a valuable puzzle game. It's such an amazing piece of work that. Within the puzzle game community, I could respect that game being full price. It's no different than, let's say, if you look at film or something. Talos?
The Talos Principle.
There you go. Good puzzle game. But if you look at let's say the film community, you might get documentaries that are much longer. It doesn't necessarily mean that that its value becomes higher or lesser. Exactly, ain't no Citizen Kane. So it's like the value is
Rosebud, motherfuckers.
Value is to the consumer. It's what they believe that this is worth. And gaming is more diverse than film because of its deep diversity. you can't really just say that, well, this is worth $20 based on the length of time. It's like, shows aren't considered that. Movies are not considered that either. So if you're watching,
I feel like I'm going to say the same statement over and over and over again throughout many podcasts that we have. But gaming is art. So what it comes down to is when you look at an art form, you can't look at it through monetary means. You can't look at it like, okay, it's this long, or it's at this quality, so it's deserving of this price.
Yes.
So it's hard to say that. It's hard to put that kind of value to something so subjective as art.
Because you can't do it with film, and you can't do it more so with games. You can't do
Absolutely.
it. It's just like different. Like to us,
gaming's a whole other animal.
Yes, to us, we know RPGs to be, to us, much more valuable. Somebody else may not feel that way if they don't like them. So it's like it might be
plenty of people.
Exactly. So it's like that length of time doesn't necessarily mean to the person that doesn't like RPGs doesn't mean better. It depends on the person.
I'm not a huge first-person shooter fan. I'm not saying that I'm not going to pay $60 for one, but there are millions of people who are willing.
Who are only playing a single-player game.
Exactly.
Not lying to you. But that's those hours that they spend with it is worth it. I can't blame them either. For $60, if you're playing a game,
I haven't bought a Call of Duty since Modern Warfare 2.
See, that's different. You see, if you're playing a game for 10 hours for $60, in my personal opinion, it's still a good deal.
Absolutely.
If you factor people are buying movies that are 2 hours long for $30, brand new, or $20.
Absolutely.
If you're buying brand new Blu-ray,
again,
you're talking about $20-$30.
Did you enjoy that movie the first time you saw it?
I fucking loved it.
Then there you go.
My fault.
Then to you, it is worth that $30.
I will have sex with Prometheus.
I still haven't seen that movie.
What the fuck?
I really haven't, dude.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're ending this podcast right now so Craig can see that. Because this is pissing me off. You guys stay tuned for episode 5. Or I like to episode 4. This is episode 3. You guys stay tuned for episode 4.
Whether or not I'm alive for that.
Whether he's alive for that, that's a question y'all might hear somebody else. This nigga got crazy.
All right, peeps.
Bye.